Hey guys, what's up? So today we will be starting with the topic historical development of geography in the lesson on perspectives in human geography. This is presented by the Book Binger. So first of all, I would like to tell you that the books, several books and notes of coaching institutes will give you infinite amount of material on this topic. You will have lots and lots of names of scholars and the work done by them, and it will be very difficult to memorize and prioritize like which one to memorize, which is important, which is not. So in this particular course, I'm giving you the important names and they will be more than sufficient for use in all the questions on human geography. Fine. So let us begin in a chronological fashion from the ancient period. So in the ancient period, also known as the Greco-Roman period, and within Greeks, there were important scholars like Homer, Hecataeus, Herodotus, and Strabo. And Homer focused on describing humans and places, and his focus was on both human and physical geography. Hecataeus, also known as the father of geography, and he focused primarily on physical geography. Then there was Herodotus. He is known as the father of history, and he studied the history of various places. So this is also known as historical geography. And thus, he was able to include humans in the subject of geography, which was dominated mostly by physical geography in the ancient times. So, he can be said to be an important human geographer. And then there was Strabo, and his focus was primarily on humans and their cultural aspects in different regions. His work was chorographical. So, you know what chorography is and what chorology is. I have explained it to you in the previous lesson. So, among Romans, a very important personality was Ptolemy, and he focused mainly on cartography, that is map making, and his focus was on physical geography. So after that, from 200 AD to 700 AD, there was a period of dark ages in Europe. Many of you must be knowing that the influence of church increased during this period over the society, and this led to a pause in the scientific development, and there was increased importance of religion over science. And during this period, geography was mostly developing in India and China. So let us come to the medieval period. So in this, the major role was played by the Arabs. So as you know, there was dark ages in the Europe in medieval period. So in Arabs, you must be knowing that Arabia is a region of hardships. It is a desert, Arabian desert, and in this area of hardship, most of the human activities are determined by nature. For example, pastoralism is prevalent in deserts. You cannot grow crops, and there is a scarcity of water. So you make settlements near the oasis. So nature determines where you settle and what kind of activities you do. So due to this increased importance of nature, the Arab geographers were more concerned about physical geography and environmental determinism. That is how environment determines our activities. So however, some also spoke about the human phenomena, that is the human geography. So, for example, Al-Biruni, he did a comparative analysis of civilization and cultures, and Ibn Khaldun, he analyzed the effect of environment on human activities like agriculture. Ibn Sina, he, he focused primarily on physical geography. So Al-Biruni and Ibn Khaldun mainly focused on the human aspects, and Ibn Sina focused on physical geography, gave his views on mountain building. And other geographers are mostly concerned about physical geography. So after that came the age of discovery. There were voyages, and before this is the period just before Renaissance in Europe. So from 15th century to 17th century, scientificism was promoted, and sea voyages led to bombardment of geographical information. For example, Columbus discovered America in the last decade of the 15th century. Vasco da Gama discovered the sea route to India. Captain Cook crossed the Antarctic Circle. So there was lots and lots of information coming. through these sea voyages into the scientific domain. And several scholars were there. For example, Leonardo da Vinci, he said that change in sea level was responsible for the presence of marine fossils over mountains and plateaus. Like there were several marine fossils found over mountains like Alps. So it was found that, okay, the sea level had changed and this was responsible for the presence of marine fossils. So due to this bombardment of information, there came a need to segregate knowledge into different disciplines. And this was being done during this period. So geography also wanted to acquire a scientific character because there were two types of disciplines. Either there was natural sciences like physics, chemistry, and there were social sciences. So geography wanted to acquire a scientific character. Since science and reasoning were given a higher stature in academics. Today also it happens. So after that came the classical period from 17th century to late 18th century. So in this period, there were two main geographers whose name you must remember. One is Varenius and the other is Immanuel Kant. So Varenius, he wrote a book Geographia Generalis, and he identified the dichotomy between human and physical geography and general and special geography. What is dichotomy? I will explain you in the next lecture. So Varenius wanted to develop a science of geography. As I explained you in the previous slide, that geography wanted to be a scientific discipline. So he emphasized on general geography and physical geography since its subject matter is static and scientific methods could be used. For example, you can use scientific methods and principles of physics in climatology, geomorphology. So that ways. So according to him, human phenomena is too variable and scientific method cannot be used to study it. Since the same phenomena cannot be repeated again and again in human geography. Each person thinks differently. So for him, humans enter geography only in special geography. However, this is very important. He also emphasized the importance of special geography, particularly for administrators. That is, he said that human phenomena and special geography is important. This variability, it is important to study this variability, especially for administrators. Fine. So after that came Immanuel Kant. Not after that, he was working parallelly during the time of Varenius in the classical period. So he was responsible for classifying this bombarded knowledge into various disciplines. So while doing so, he found that geography and history do not have subject matter of their own. And they were exceptional. So this was his idea of exceptionalism. So carefully understand this, that geography and history are exceptional, that they do not have subject matter of their own like other natural sciences. So he classified these disciplines based on the approach followed. That is, history was description of phenomena in time and geography was description of phenomena in space. That is how he was able to classify them. And geography was, for him, was chorography. So you already know what chorography is and what chorology is. I have told about it in the previous lecture. So apart from that, he also identified dichotomy between human and physical geography and general and special geography, just like Varenius. And he gave more emphasis on human geography and regional geography. Like Varenius gave more emphasis on physical geography and general geography. He gave more emphasis on human geography and regional geography. That is special geography, you can say. So also he developed themes like idealism, which later became the core of behavioralism. So what is idealism? It means to focus on understanding the feelings and ideas of other people by recreating those ideas. Like, you must have seen Sherlock Holmes series. So what he does, he starts to recreate the ideas of others to understand how they must be thinking. So this is the principle of idealism in simple words. So after this came the pre-modern period from late 18th century to 1859. That is the middle of the 19th century. So during this time there were two major figures in geography, Humboldt and Ritter. Humboldt wrote a book, Cosmos, and he wanted to understand the unity of cosmos. That is total understanding of the geographical phenomena. However, if he focused more on physical geography and used inductive methodology and systematic approach. So you can see that he's a more of a scientific person. But apart from that, he also spoke on human aspects. So he's not a hardcore physical geographist. He focuses more on physical geography and scientific stuff, but he also speaks of human aspects at some places. And then there was Ritter. He wrote a book, Ardhkunde, and he wanted to focus to understand the unity in diversity. That is total understanding of the geographical phenomena. So you can see the ultimate aim of both Humboldt and Ritter was the same. That is total understanding of the geographical phenomena. Fine, they may be having different approaches, but their aim was same. So unlike Humboldt, Ritter was more focused on human geography and he used deductive methodology and regional approach. He believed that nature has a God-given purpose and we must try to understand this purpose. So this is the idea of teleology. So he was a teleologist who believed in God as being the planner of universe and man being a performer on this grand stage created by God. So he's not as scientific as Humboldt and he wants to explore the variability of human phenomena and try to understand it from the perspective of a God-given purpose of humans. So he developed the concepts of horizontal unity and vertical unity. So let us delve deeper into what this horizontal unity and vertical unity is. So regarding this idea of horizontal unity and vertical unity by Ritter, to classify regions, you can choose a criteria such as topography and you may be able to classify the given space into two regions, let us say. Fine. Then if you choose topography plus climate, then you may be able to classify these regions into total of three regions, this particular space into three regions. So if you include topography plus climate plus culture, you may be able to classify these into five regions. And let us say you use topography, climate, culture, and let us say agriculture. Then you may be able to classify this into six regions. So this particular, as we move down on the vertical axis, this is known as vertical unity. So vertical unity is important for, you can write this down, vertical unity is important for identification of regions, correct? And it is defined as the intra-regional relationship between different criteria to identify regions. I will repeat again, vertical unity is important for identification of regions. It is defined as the intra-regional relationship between different criteria to identify regions. So this particular definition is sort of self-explanatory. So as you move along the horizontal axis, this is known as horizontal unity. So horizontal unity helps us to identify, write this down, interrelationship between different regions. and it helps us to establish a hierarchy of regions. I repeat, horizontal unity helps us to identify interrelationship between different regions, and it helps us to establish a hierarchy of regions. Example, how smaller regions are combining, let us say, these three regions are combining to form this particular region. These three regions are combining to form this particular region. So it is helping in establishing a hierarchy and how this region is different from this region. Fine. So an interrelationship between different regions can also be established. This is horizontal unity. So this was the idea of Ritter. Fine. So now coming back to the modern period. In the modern period from 1859 to late 1980s, there were two schools of thought, the German school and the French school. So this I am talking about the early modern. Modern period is divided into three parts. That is early modern, intermediate modern and late modern. So first we are talking about early modern period. It was from 1859 to World War I. So during this there were two schools, German school and the French school. In the German school there was Peschel and Richthofen, and their focus was mainly on physical geography. They used both the systematic and the regional approach. And another very important scholar was Ratzel. He wrote a book, Anthropogeography 1, Volume 1 and Volume 2. He focused more on systematic approach and gave the concept of new or scientific environmental determinism. So what was it? It was environmental determinism based upon cause-effect relationship. Since environmental determinism before him was based upon naturalism. So these particular terms I will be explaining in detail in the next lesson. So Ratzel also gave the concept of organic state. That is, for a state to survive, it must grow in its Lebensraum by feeding on neighboring states. However, later in volume 2 of the book, Anthropogeography, he also explained cultural phenomena. So earlier in volume 1, he was more focused upon the physical aspects and environmental determinism, how environment controls us. And in the latter half of the book, he's more concerned about the cultural aspects, that how the cultural aspects of the humans shape their activities. So this idea was led to later the development of possibilism by Vidal in the French school. Another two important people in the German school were Alfred Hettner and Otto Schluter. So their focus was mainly upon regional approach, and they tried to develop chorology. So chorology I have explained you in the previous lesson also. So let us try to find and learn better what exactly chorology is. So chorology, as per Hettner, it was to find an analytical relationship between different aspects and to demarcate regions using that. So let us say, for example, we take physiography. Within physiography, there is topography, there is climate, there is soil, there is drainage, there is vegetation. Fine. Then another aspect can be the economy. So economy can be based upon mining, or it can be based upon agriculture, or it can be based upon the secondary sector, or it can be based upon the tertiary sector. Also, apart from it, several cultural aspects can be there. For example, There can be differences in language, religion, demography. Fine. So, as per Hettner, let us say we take topography. Fine. We take topography and try to demarcate a space into some regions. Then we take drainage. We try to demarcate the region, the space into on the basis of drainage basins. Then, for example, we take language and we try to demarcate the space into several regions. So what Hettner says that you select some criteria and you choose these criteria in sequence and then make different maps for them as per regions. Like this is for topography, this is for drainage, and this is for language. And then try to superimpose these maps one above the other to get a final picture of the different regions which can be differentiated from each other based upon the chosen criteria. So here you can see we are integrating different criteria. So this is an example of chorology. However, Hettner failed in this approach because his most of the life was spent in collecting data and organizing it into separate maps. So he could not ultimately analyze it to develop this chorology. So Otto Schluter, he criticized Hettner and he said that his approach is too rigid in terms of the sequence to be followed, the criteria to be chosen, and it was quite rigid. For example, first you choose topography, then you choose climate, superimpose climate over topography, climatic map over topographical map, then you choose vegetation and superimpose the map. So he said that this was quite cumbersome and this led to various difficulties in regionalization. So as per Otto Schluter, you must start from a natural region, that is a natural landscape. So he called this natural landscape as our Landschaft. Fine. And he said that over a period of time, culture applies over it and it converts, this Erlandschaft converts into Kultur Land SCHAFT shaft. Land LEND. Fine, so this is the natural landscape which is initially chosen, and using culture we convert it into a cultural landscape. So this is the idea of Otto Schluter. So Otto Schluter said that instead of doing this rigid chorology as suggested by Hettner, we should first identify natural regions, natural landscape, and then along with culture convert it into a cultural landscape. So now coming to the French school. In French school, there was Philippe Bosch, and he was a deterministic geographer who was focused upon pure and natural regions. He developed Rhine geography, and in Rhine geography, it is the pure geography as per him, in which the earth is divided into natural regions, and these natural regions are the drainage basins separated by water divides. So another important, very important rather, figure was Vidal de la Blache, and he was influenced by the humanistic writings of Montesquieu, who was a French philosopher, and he focused more on human geography. So he focused on pays, which are river valleys in France, and he studied the human environment. That is, he chose a natural landscape as pays, that is river valleys, and studied the human environment, human and environment interaction between in the pace, which has led to the development of distinct cultures, which he called as genere divii, also known as the way of life. Thus, he's saying that human environment interaction happens and humans are the masters of their own destiny, and they convert pays into generative I. So he is giving the concept of possibilism, that in environment does not determine our activities, rather our culture and our interaction with our environment determine the way of life, that is generative I. Another philosopher was Lucien Febvre, and he developed on the ideas of Vidal, and he gave an extreme form of possibilism. Like Vidal's possibilism was quite balanced, but for Lucien Febvre, possibilism was very extreme. For example, Vidal realized the effect of environment, that within the limits of environment, humans' culture plays a role. But for Lucien Febvre, their environment gave no limits, like humans could do anything they wanted. So then in the intermediate modern period, from World War I to World War II, the focus of geographical development shifted to America. And just before this war, this was seen in the works of J.W. Powell and G.K. Gilbert. They were mostly physical geographers. And there was a very tall figure in geography in Americas, and that was W.M. Davis. So he focused mainly on physical geography. However, he also suggested that human geography was important, and it was ontography for him. So what is ontography? It is the study of effect of environment on humans. That is, you can say he was an environment determinist. Then there was Mark Jefferson in Americas, who focused on regional approach and developed the concept of primate city. You will study this in settlement geography. And there was Ellen C. Semple. She was a disciple of Ratzel and gave the concept of extreme form of environmental determinism. So apart from that, there was Carl Sawyer of the Berkeley School, who wrote Morphology of Landscape book and gave the concept of cultural determinism. So, and Richard Hartshorne was there in this period, and he wrote a book, Nature of Geography, and developed the concept of areal differentiation and regional synthesis. So all these terms, areal differentiation, regional synthesis, I will deal in the next lesson. Also cultural determinism. These concepts will come later. Just bear with me for now. And then came the late modern period. This is also a part of the modern period. This was from World War II to late 1980s. And during this period, it was divided into two parts. From 1950 to 1972, there was the quantitative revolution. And from 1972 to 1980s, it was a multi-paradigmatic phase, as told in the previous lesson. And there was a dominance of behavioralism, humanism, and radicalism. So after that, from late 80s to late 90s, there was a crisis phase, and then we have moved towards the mono paradigm of environmentalism. So after late 80s, the period is known in geography is known as the postmodern period. So apart from this chronological history depicting the major geographers, there are some other important geographers that you can remember their names. For example, there was British school, where there was dominance of applied regionalism and historical trend in geography. Important geographers were Mackinder, who gave the heartland theory; Patrick Geddes, who worked in the field of urban planning and gave the concept of conurbation. There was Herbertson, who identified natural regions on the basis of climate, vegetation, soil. There were Berry and Shorley, who developed the general system theory in 1950s and 60s. And then there was the Russian school. Russian school was filled with dichotomy between determinism and indeterminism, or you can say an extreme form of possibilism, and physical geography and human geography. So important geographers were Anuchin, and he gave the concept of neo-determinism, that is a midway between determinism and indeterminism. And there was Dokuchev, and he gave a generalized theory of soil formation and classification. So guys, that's it for today's lecture. Like, share, subscribe, and comment to spread the word about this novel initiative. Thank you.